And I wanted to feel reassured that they knew who you were, and I knew you on a lot deeper level, and I didn't feel as though they did. You were just somebody that, because you were well behaved, they didn't think that there were any problems.
You had a lot of skills, but you were unsure how to show them. You lacked confidence in, I suppose, your ability at that stage.
Kind of tell from the off it wasn't a school for me. I think the first thing I can probably bring up was walking into the doors for the first time and you see two year 11s having a fight.
So, Will, what was your first experiences like at your first school you attended?
Not a great start, to be honest. You could kind of tell from the off it wasn't a school for me. I think the first thing I can probably bring up was walking into the doors for the first time and you see two year 11s having a fight. And that was about 5 minutes in. So straight away you're kind of overwhelmed, because when you're coming from a primary school it's daunting going in seeing older people, because you're looking at you being the oldest class and then you're with a bunch of 18-year-olds, and when you see an 18-year-olds having a fight it can be a bit overwhelming at times. Okay, back on record.
Ready?
Okay. That would be Denby High School, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think when you first went to Denby High School, I think you were naturally a very good boy. You were a very quiet child. You were very reflective. And I think you seem to have this idea that if you were going to go to school, all you needed to do was behave yourself. And I think a lot of children in your class were maybe not as well behaved. You always said that, oh my God, you know, you should have seen the way that some of the people were behaving. And you always said that the teachers were really lovely, but they didn't have a really good control over the class.
Literally what you said then, lack of motivation, no desire. I was very scared to try new things, I think is the best way to put it. I wasn't confident in my own ability, and obviously as time's gone on, obviously me now is it's a completely different story, but back then I was just, again, so isolated and didn't believe in myself. And I think I was the kind of person, if someone told me I was doing well, someone told me I could do this, then that would have given me the confidence to go on. But I didn't really have that at Denby High School. Once again, due to the teachers being distracted by other pupils, I didn't really have the almost role model. I think I needed a role model to get me through it, because I've had role models outside of school, but in school I never had that role model to help support me. I think one thing you always used to bring up to me was parents' evening as well.
I hated parents' evening.
So again, so going back to Denby High School, what was parents' evening like from what you could remember?
I felt as though parents' evening was a bit of an ordeal, really. All the teachers ever used to say about you was that you're just lovely. You're such a lovely, well-behaved, polite young man who always turns up to work, turns up to college, turns up to school, as you should, with the right equipment, all the things that you needed. But all they ever said about you was that you were lovely, and I wanted to feel reassured that they knew who you were, and I knew you on a lot deeper level, and I didn't feel as though they did. You were just somebody that, because you were well behaved, they didn't think that there were any problems. But for me, I didn't feel that you were catching your education. You weren't engaged with the lessons. You didn't seem to be able to tell me what you'd learnt in school, and you just skimmed over everything. So it just felt for me as though you weren't having a proper experience of education in that setting. And because you were unusual in the fact that you were well behaved, there was no behavioural problems, there was no issues in your background, you had a nice upbringing, a lovely home, there was no poverty or deprivation, you seemed to be fine, but I knew that you weren't learning and you weren't having, in my opinion, an education.
Because there's part of me that's always going to say, I wish I did this, I wish I did that.
So it's quite scary.
But the other part of me is
obviously a lot
like,
younger.
once again,
and all
if
I
I didn't
remember
have that
really is a couple of
learning,
people, I'm not naming
which
them,
we'll be moving
who
on
would
to in a
sort of
second,
took you under the
obviously,
ring a little
St.
bit.
Bridget's and stuff like that.
And obviously
But if
it's
I
a
never
small
had that
school, so I think you sort of
learning
found your way around, but you
experience,
did have quite a bit of support from people who
it
decided
wouldn't
to
make me
sort
the
of
person I am
look after
today.
you. But you were very, very shy for when I first started teaching you, and sort of quite unsure really, which I suppose natural really, because it's, you know, GCSE years, we're going up to A level, isn't it? So yeah, from that side, it's quite quiet, I would say.
The digital side of learning, I know that you were quite artistic as well. You really loved Banksy and graffiti work and being creative. And you had an opportunity to do like Welsh Baccalaureate, which was also quite flexible, sort of course-based learning that wasn't about gearing up towards sitting an exam. And you also had support, strangely, from your first school, and the art department really liked you, didn't they? You had a lovely art teacher. So with some really good communication and working together with all of your respective teachers who you were particularly close to, I think they enabled you to have a bit of a curriculum for the next 2 years that focused on the things that you really enjoyed. And that's when I started to see a change in you, where you were going between 2 schools, you were spending time with teachers who were a bit more creative and who really understood you and didn't focus on exams or scientific minds or, you know, facts and figures. You were allowed to work really flexibly in a creative environment, and I think that's when you started to really engage with your subjects and you really looked at learning. You loved working with cameras, you loved the artistic side of digital photography, you had lots of ideas about how you wanted to shape your own projects. And that's the first time, bearing in mind you were 16, 17, that's the first time I really saw you enjoying learning.
Your talents, you really underestimated who you really were, and I think you'd lost your way a little bit. So when you came here, I think it was, you saw it as a fresh start, and I think that was the one thing that, you know, it's all been to do with maybe you'd lost your confidence, but actually I think you saw this as a great opportunity, and I think your parents also were, you know, really supportive in seeing this as a fresh start for you. So to begin with, you're really lacking in confidence, but at the same time I could see in there that there was, you know, somebody with actually a really lovely character, really lovely nature, and somebody who would, you know, with a bit of time, a bit of nurture from staff, from students as well, I think, you know, that your sort of real character would come out, the real will would come out.
That's the first time I really saw you enjoying learning, and that made me feel really good. And it was almost as if we bought ourselves another 2 years where we could have a relax and you could settle into learning and work really hard and for the first time understand what it's like to learn and achieve and respond to the tasks that you were given. So yeah, I really enjoyed you being in the sixth form. I thought it was lovely, and you had lots of support, and I saw you starting to come out of your shell, and I noticed that you had a lot of positive reinforcement from your teachers. They used to talk to you a lot more as an individual, and that for me was lovely to see you conversing. I also dropped you off at school one day and I saw you catch up with one of your teachers, and hearing you having a conversation with a teacher about, you know, just anything, just having a conversation with you as a person was something I hadn't really observed before, and that's one of my lasting memories, was how very different your experience of education was, and it was brilliant from my point of view.
Yeah. And I think The last question is leading on to now. So, obviously, leaving school now, educations, I got my grades and I managed to get into College
Brilliant
Cambria.
grades,
Got
I
brilliant
know.
grades.
Yeah.
I think it went from U's and F's to B's and C's, A stars in Welsh Brack, and that got me the move to College Cambria, where I actually studied something completely different.
Yeah.
And this is where
And that experience as well for me, you had a really low grade at GCSE, and at that point you ended up getting a B at English when you'd have that one-to-one. So for me, I recognised you can do it, you do have those skills, and it was just brilliant for me to see you flourish and work hard and really understand what it was that you needed to do, and on top of it you got a B at GCSE, and you having a B was definitely something I didn't expect. So I knew that you were intelligent, I knew that you had those capabilities, and you needed to learn how to learn. I don't think you had that before, so that was brilliant.